we get through that initial few seconds and
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Hey, y'all. What's up? Welcome back to What the Hype. This week, Micah and I are recapping and reacting to White Lotus Season 3, Episode 5. Saw it a few days ago, and I gotta say, it's still sticking with me. Micah, honestly, I don't know where to begin
your
because
face honestly just says it all.
yeah, a lot of shit happened.
Uh-huh.
And I
And
mean, I think some of it was predictable.
some of it was predictable,
Mm-hmm.
and I should apologize. It's my fault we didn't get a reaction episode out right away. I was traveling and then other things came up, but we want to stay consistent and we want to make sure, since we started this with episode 4, after having done a full podcast on the first 3 episodes, that we talk about this moon party. I guess when the
Yeah,
full moon is out, all bets are off.
I guess so. Because we've got uh, incest coming into this weird foursome that's probably maybe happening. We've got friends backstabbing each other. We've got Timothy on the verge of taking his life this episode. There's just a ton going
There's
on. I
lizards
mean,
behind your furniture.
lizards behind your furniture. There's Rick in
Oh
Bangkok.
my gosh. I want to know how many takes that scene took.
Honestly, Rick was all of us in that scene. I'm so, and I forget who was the person he was meeting with. I forget that guy's name.
It's a friend. I don't think
Yeah.
they ever say his name.
Okay. But I mean, he was literally all of us. I can't say that I've ever had a conversation with someone quite like that, but I have had the experience of seeing someone for the first time in a long time
Mhm.
and having them say some like interesting stuff and sitting there being like, "Yeah. Uh-huh." How he managed, how Rick managed to keep a straight face and actually like seem intrigued the whole time is beyond me. I don't know how they were able to do that.
Honestly, I have no idea, and kudos to the actor for just, as you said, being all of us in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, where do we want to start?
I mean, I gotta say, when it comes to the trio, the Mean Girl trio, I am not as invested in their journey,
Hmm,
but this episode actually
it piqued your
kind of
interest?
it did pique my interest because it feels like there is more to Valentine than meets the eye. And I think we talked about that either in the podcast episode we did or last week, but it's very clear that he had something to do with the robbery that happened at the
Hmm.
White Lotus early on. And he's taking these three women who are looking to have a good time, taking them out, taking them to all these clubs, and all of a sudden they realize they're being watched by a trio of Russian women who eventually walk up and confront Valentine and his crew. We don't know what it was they were confronting them about because they're speaking in Russian. Um, any Russian translator want to like let us know what they said exactly? I'm sure it's online somewhere. I don't know if that's something that you've looked into, Micah, but it's very clear that there's something more nefarious going on here.
Right. Are these Valentine and his friends significant others? And do they not take well to the fact that they're out with Jacqueline Kate and Lori. That could certainly be what's happening here. There could be more to the story. Maybe we'll find out in future episodes. I did want to mention around the robbery if we think that Valentine was involved, and we have good suspicion to think so based on this the way he was having that conversation with Gaitak when the robber's vehicle just strolled right into the White Lotus property, then are we meant to believe that his two friends were the ones who were the robbers?
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet, honestly. Um, yeah, and I mean, wasn't it that he was promising Guy Talk tickets to a fight or something like
Yeah,
that? So I mean, Guy Talk, he's a nice guy, but he's very easily distracted.
he is.
He's like not the best guard person.
No, I think his talents are better served elsewhere. I'm not entirely sure what job that would be, but security guard. Well, you know what? Under normal circumstances, maybe being a security guard at the White Lotus would fit him, but given some of the guests that they have had recently, probably not working too well in his favor. And the fight also gets brought up again in this episode. So I'm assuming that we will go and see this fight maybe in episode 6.
Yeah, yeah. Well, while we're talking about Guy Talk, I feel like we should also check in on Mook. How are you
Mm,
feeling about Mook? I know last time we spoke about her, we were like, is she kind of suspicious? Is she distracting Guy Talk?
I don't, I've thought about this a little bit. I don't think so. I
Okay.
I would be very disappointed at this point if there was more to her that we haven't been made aware of. She just doesn't seem like she's been developed enough as a character to have a major role, but who knows? We could be surprised. I just that part of me like I after having watched episode 5, I just feel like there's just not a whole lot to her. I think she wants more out of Guy Talk. She probably has greater career ambitions for him than he does at this point.
Mm, yeah,
How
that's
do you
fair.
feel?
I still feel like she's set up to be kind of sus, but I agree with you that we're over the halfway point now, and it just seems like the window of opportunity to like develop her enough for that is closing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if there's nothing established in episode 6, I think we can probably put that theory to bed. The theory about her, having nefarious intent with
Right.
regards to Guy Talk.
And one theory that I actually had heard today was that perhaps, and it's not necessarily a theory as it relates to the storyline, it's more a theory just around how this role is being portrayed is just an entry point for this actress to Hollywood. Essentially, we know she's a
Right.
huge star um, in Thailand. Is this her opportunity? And so there really isn't a whole lot more to her character because this is really her first foray into acting, and so they're giving her a little bit of a more mild role. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if we're surprised with
Mhm.
her, but while my suspicion radar was up on her early on, there just isn't enough to hold on to with her right now.
Yeah. I agree. I agree, but it would be very like Mike White to surprise us this way and to like have her character take a very sudden turn. So, we'll keep an eye on it, but yeah, I feel like if we don't get anything this week, probably not.
Hmm.
So let's check in with Timothy and family.
Timothy's having a rough go of it,
Yeah.
and you just can't help but feel bad for him in this episode. He's totally disconnected from the conversation that his wife and Piper are having at the table. And it's a fairly important conversation because it involves Piper's future and her aspirations to stay in Thailand. And yeah, he's reached his wits end. We know he's stolen the gun from Guy Talk. And by the end of the episode, he clearly has plans to use it on himself. He starts writing a goodbye letter to his family and is only saved because his wife shows up just in the nick of time. So,
Hmm. Which I thought was really shitty because, like, uh, he was just gonna do it on the veranda of their suite at the White Lotus.
mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. Part of that made me wonder if he was kind of fighting himself to do it. Like, you know what I mean?
He was clearly struggling with it. And if Victoria doesn't show up in that moment, it's hard to say what would have happened.
Yeah.
I do agree with you. The, the fact that he was going to do it right then and there and could have it would have woken his wife, presuming she was sleeping, woken his daughter, presuming she was sleeping, given a horrific scene for both of his sons to come back to after they return from this
Mm-hmm.
party. You know, I am curious now, though, because he has made this decision to not go through with it. Where does that leave him? What next steps is he going to take? Who may he look to seek out to help with his financial situation? It seems like a perfect opportunity for Gary to step in here based
Yeah.
on their conversation on the yacht a couple of episodes ago. That could be their saving grace because I truly believe this family is not leaving Thailand. Like,
Mm-mm.
there's too many financial hardships, legal hardships, at least for Timothy. But you also have to ask yourself the question, what about Victoria? What about the three kids? It's clear Piper wouldn't have any issues staying here, but there's the whole rest of the family. And I still have a lot of suspicions around Victoria. Like, there are questions there that I need answers to.
Yeah, it really seems like she knows more than she's letting on. I feel like she plays dumb
Yeah,
a
I don't think
lot of
she's
the
dumb.
time. She is not dumb. She's definitely hamming that up.
And I'm trying to remember back. This was within the first couple of episodes. I feel like she make a comment about stashing funds away in the Caribbean somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then remember the reaction she had. I can't remember whether was it Kate or Lori that recognized her and she just kind of played it off like I don't know what you're talking about. Like, there's more to her and what's going on with her than I think we're going to find out about within these next few episodes. I don't know what it is, but she's not the only shady Ratliff
Mm-hmm.
besides Timothy.
And honestly, I would not be surprised if she knew at least partially what was going on with Timothy
Hmm.
and if she was using that to basically provide cover for her to do a bunch of illegal stuff too because she's not the obvious target, right? Like
No.
she's kind of playing the role of, you know, an upper class trophy wife. But I don't think that's who she is.
No, clearly she didn't want, and again, I have to go back and watch the scene. I can't remember if it was Kate or Lori that said, "Oh, I'll tell so and so that you say that I saw you," and she's like, it's almost like she doesn't want to be seen. She
Mm-hmm.
doesn't want somebody to recognize her. So
I
there's,
wonder what she did. Did she do
yeah,
something? Like, did she
maybe.
kill somebody? Like,
Hmm. I
I'm
don't
very
know.
curious. But yeah, I think she has her finger on the pulse more than she would want you to think,
Hmm.
for sure.
Now with Piper, we talked a little bit about her. She comes clean. Victoria has one of her natural reactions, which
Mm-hmm.
Parker Posey does such an amazing
Oh
job.
gosh, she's so amazing.
So, do we think Lachlan would have made any difference? Piper wanted him there. I don't know how much he would have done in this situation outside of maybe some moral support afterwards.
Yeah. I honestly, Timothy's only half paying attention
Yeah,
anyway,
he's
so
checked out.
it's really Victoria that Piper has to contend with, and she reacts in a pretty predictable way here. But I do think, Micah, you mentioned not thinking this family is going to leave Thailand. I agree with you. I think Timothy's probably hearing this plan Piper has to stay in this meditation school here. And I think he's actually a little more supportive of the idea because it could be an easier way to convince the rest of the family to stay, potentially, or allow them to feel like, hey, our kid doesn't live halfway around the world because we're here with her too.
Mm,
So,
right.
yeah.
And let's not forget, too, with Gary, we learn that he has not been cooperating with the Italian authorities. So he's wanted for a crime back in Italy, potentially. He might have some good advice to give Timothy about how to, you know, essentially steer clear of the law by staying in another foreign country. I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like those two are going to have more conversations in the future.
Yeah. Does Thailand have an extradition treaty with the
I was just going
US?
to, I was wondering that.
I'm looking that up right now because, this is how we fact find on the spot.
Hmm.
And oh wow, that auto populated quickly. Yeah, they do. They have an extradition treaty.
I guess it just depends like what
Yeah.
level of crime this really rises to at the end of the day. Like how active
Yeah.
would the US be in pursuing Timothy Ratliff?
Yeah, that's true. Because you would think they would be more interested in Gary, given it's like suspected murder. But also, it happened in Italy, so like, is the
Hmm.
U.S. even involved in that at all? Even though Gary and
And
Tanya,
conveniently, it happened. Well, I guess would where it happened fall under international waters?
I think it just depends on how far out they were.
Mm, they weren't that far out.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think they'd still technically be Italy.
Well, let's wrap up the Ratliff family here. Let's talk a little bit about Lachlan and Saxon, who are out partying with Chloe and Chelsea. And, they're having a good time. Lachlan's letting his hair down a little bit, letting loose, not being afraid to come out of his shell a little bit.
Yeah, I would say Lachlan actually has more natural charisma than Saxon because we see him just performing magic tricks
Hmm.
for these women that they're talking to, and it's like very him, very authentic and cute. Whereas Saxon just he puts on such airs that it's like, oh, this is fake and it feels gross, and it's exactly the reason why why am I blanking on Rick's girlfriend's name right now? Chloe?
Chelsea.
Chelsea. It's Chloe and Chelsea, and I get them mixed up. It's exactly the reason why Chelsea is like, ew, gross, get away from me.
Hmm. But Chloe is interested in Lachlan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she is. So it kind of seems like um yeah, it kind of seems like they're being put, well, she's being put in a position to, Chelsea is being put in a position to basically
Deal with Saxon.
deal with Saxon so that Chelsea can hang out with Lachlan, who is how old?
18.
Yeah. So, like, ew. But,
Yeah. Well, they're out partying. There's some drugs that come into play. Saxon very clearly states that he doesn't do drugs, only to be peer pressured into it moments later. There is one scene I wanted to talk about with Lachlan because he does look like he takes the drugs, but then as they're walking away, actually looks like he spits it out.
oh, really? I didn't catch that.
Yeah. So that's not to take away from the fact that he's consumed a ton of alcohol and probably hasn't drank all that much. So I'm sure his state of mind is very much impaired, regardless of where we're going with this. But I will say it's definitely less impaired than the rest of the three of them, if in
Yeah.
fact he did do that. And where my mind went with this too is, you referred to him, and I think most people, and he was referred to this way on the show, as kind of being this magician. So like having the sleight of hand to be able to just like spit out the ecstasy
Mm-hmm.
and not have anybody notice it, I think speaks to his character.
Yeah.
Um,
It's smart. It's not a good idea to just take something like that a
no,
stranger hands you and is like, here.
especially in a foreign country.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then let's just let's get to the scene, the end scene, at least for these two brothers, of this episode. And Laura, it's almost like Rick and his friend's conversation in terms of the reaction, because they just basically all start making out with each other,
Yeah.
except for Chelsea, right? Lachlan makes out with Chloe. Chloe makes out with Chelsea, and then they dare Lachlan and Saxon to make out with each other. And initially, it's just like what you would most likely expect two guys to do, and just like peck each other on the lips. And but Lachlan goes in for a little bit extra.
And Saxon's down.
Yeah,
At
and
least right now, he is.
so a lot of different directions this can go. I like there's part of me that thinks that Lachlan in this moment is actually exerting a level of dominance over his brother,
Mm,
because likely if we're to think that most of their childhood is similar to how we've seen them behave toward each other, in these first couple of episodes, Lachlan probably is, I don't necessarily think he's looked down upon, but he's certainly the little brother. Like this
mm-hmm.
gave him the opportunity to really make a statement. And likely once Saxon remembers it, he's going to be in like a right state of mind.
Yeah, probably. But
What are your thoughts on that?
yeah, I mean, I also think that there's probably some confusion for him because we established this a couple of discussions ago, but there is a very weird
Mm-hmm.
sexual dynamic at play between these siblings at the very least, being
Yep.
projected by Saxon, and it seems like Lachlan is picking up on it. I don't know if he's picking up on it in the way that Saxon is intending. I
Mm,
think Saxon is trying to like turn his little brother into a horn dog just like him.
right.
And I think he got more than he bargained for with that. But I mean, we see the way that Saxon talks about their sister as well. There are some very like murky boundaries when it comes to privacy and like sexuality with these siblings that makes me think, especially as the younger sibling in a completely different place, having inhibitions lowered.
Mm-hmm.
I think that could be what led to this.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. There's a couple more episodes to go.
It's not healthy, whatever it is.
No, and it's going to be. I'm curious to see how this all comes together by the end of the season because, to your point, we know how Saxon has talked about Piper, but where does this leave Piper in this weird sibling incestuous trio?
Yeah, it seems like she would rather hang out with Lachlan. It seems like she doesn't have much love for Saxon or desire to be
No.
around him. Like, I mean, even with them, going on this or going to this full moon party, she had no interest in doing that. She, like, is very clearly, serious about her faith and meditation and everything. But it's clear she has a more of a connection with the younger brother.
Hmm. I did like what you said too about his inhibitions being lowered. Maybe this is almost like a cathartic experience that Lachlan is going to have while he's in Thailand. Like he's just going to go through this transformation that's just like all of his guard rails just drop and he's able to find like peace of mind. Because I think back to the episode where he was getting his posture evaluated and the person doing it was talking about how like guarded he was and mentioned like with the way that his legs were crossed something to do with the feminine side of his body. So like I don't know, there's probably a lot to read into there like once we get the full season to go back and evaluate it, but just more food for thought.
Yeah, I think there is something to be said about like the impact of being abroad and kind of being immersed somewhere else that is so different from everything that you know. Because I've lived abroad and
Mm,
something that's like fairly common for people, and it's not like always a bad thing. But people will try different things
right.
when they're living somewhere that feels like far away from
Hmm.
everything they know.
Like Rick's friend.
Exactly. So
He
that
tried a lot.
he tried a lot of things. But if Rick's friend one day decides he wants to like up and move back to the United States and pretend that was never a part of his life, it's a lot easier because you can kind of mentally compartmentalize it because of the distance.
Right.
So
Yeah,
that
that
could
that's
be
a
part of it too.
that's a great point. Hmm.
Yeah. Who else do we want to touch on before we wrap here? Have we missed anyone?
We can talk a little bit about the Gary, Belinda, Pornchai, and Fabian, who
And Fabian, that's right.
this
That's
guy
right.
is useless.
He
Like,
really is. Part of me also is like, is he sus? I feel like I
yeah,
get in,
is he
I,
Gary's henchman? Like,
right.
that's kind of what it seemed
Yeah,
like.
I get into like around this time every season, I'm just like everyone's suspicious. Everyone's in on it. And
Yeah,
now I find myself feeling that way about Fabian. The way that he approached Belinda about Gary
super creepy.
felt creepy.
We
And
have
like
somebody who's
normally,
very interested in you. Like, what?
yeah, but also mention that he has a wife or a girlfriend that he's here with, but he's very interested in you, girl. Like, ooh,
Yeah.
gross. It just, it felt off to me because Fabian is awkward in every interaction, but this didn't just feel awkward to me. It felt a little extra creepy.
Almost wonder if Gary had a hand in Fabian saying something to Belinda. Like maybe he paid him to, because right now we haven't seen Gary start to take any specific action. So I'm wondering if this was just a scare tactic on his part to basically tell Belinda, look, you need to back off. But I'm curious if Fabian is feeding information to Gary because remember, Belinda's first inclination was to call the police and he refused to do it. So if like the more information that starts to get back to Gary, I think like he'll start to ratchet it up even more and more. I don't think I'd be very surprised if he's going to like go all out right away and murder her because I think that would be super suspicious. And he doesn't want to keep drawing attention to the fact that he is constantly at these resorts that have murders that are happening at them. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and if his aim is to make her disappear, it's probably not smart for him to express too much interest in her. So it would make sense to me if he is paying Fabian off in some way and buying his silence too.
Hmm.
Because, yeah, you're right. Fabian's very quick to emphatically be like, no, we cannot call the police here.
Yeah. He's putting a premium on Gary as a local resident because we know he doesn't really stay at the hotel. He's got his own place, but he's most likely a man of influence in that area. And so Fabian doesn't want to rock the boat at all. Now,
Yeah.
what about Porn Chai, who got some porn chai in this episode? Or it looked like it was going in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a budding romance between him and Belinda. They seem to be getting along quite well with each
Yeah,
other,
this
which
was
is
so
nice.
sweet, and I really hope that it's not sus. That's the only
Oh,
thing
you
is
think
I'm just prepared for everyone to
anything?
be
Yeah.
a traitor at this point. And Belinda is so great and she deserves this, so I hope it's real.
What do we make of the lizard that we see? Because it's not the first time she's encountered the lizard.
Yeah, well, she doesn't know what it
Symbolism
is.
of what sort do you think? If
Yeah.
any.
Well, it's not the first time she hears it, right? It's the first time she actually sees what's making the noise,
Right, but she
right?
she does encounter one, I think, on one of the walking paths early on in this
Oh, yeah.
season. But yes, she's been hearing things, and then Porn Chai uses his instincts to say, "Wait, that's not coming from outside; it's actually coming from inside." And do we think? I don't know. Like, I wondered, is it somehow a symbol of like Jennifer Coolidge's character? Like, is it her like
Oh,
presence being
interesting.
there, or is it? I mean, the flip side of that potentially could be like maybe it's representative of Gary, like this
Yeah.
reptile, this like lizard that's just kind of hanging out and watching you, like he's there but you don't see him. He's behind the scenes type of thing. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I like it. I think the stream might have frozen a
Oh,
little bit there. But I hear what you're saying about like is it symbolism for Gary watching her? I
mm,
did look it up. Are they iguanas?
I have no idea.
Okay, I think they're iguanas.
Or monitor? They're not. Monitor lizards are bigger, right?
Yeah, I think so. Hang on. What are the lizards in the White Lotus season 3? Oh, no, it is a monitor lizard.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Monitor lizard symbolism. That's what I wanted to
Oh,
look up.
nice.
In some cultures, monitor lizards, particularly the Indian monitor lizard, are considered sacred and are associated with deities, representing strength, fertility, and even divine messengers. So maybe it could also be um, representative of Belinda.
Could be. Yeah.
So there are a couple of possibilities there.
Yeah, I like either the Belinda or the Tanya
Mm-hmm.
representation. So,
Yeah, my headcanon is still that Tanya survived somehow.
oh really?
Yeah,
I would
we'll
love
see.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
I
would
would.
be funny. It would be such a White Lotus twist for that to
Mhm.
happen. But we'll have to see.
So, where does this leave us heading into the next episode? It seems like we will get more with Rick, perhaps the confrontation with Jim Hollinger.
Mm-hmm.
The fight, it seems like we're going to have a couple of characters attending. Now, at the very least, it seems like Guy Tack will be there, and it seems like either all of Jacqueline, Kate, and Lori, or a combination of them. That whole group is going to be fractured by the time this trip is
Mm-hmm.
over, right? That's where we're going.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, Jacqueline is like the typical mean girl who kind of jazzes her friend up
Mm-hmm.
to pursue someone and then at the last minute goes and takes the guy for herself. Not a girl's girl.
Yeah. Interested to see how the Belinda Gary storyline develops. We do
Mm-hmm.
know that her son Zion, she's on the phone with him in this episode, is supposed to come tomorrow, which should be the next episode. So
Yeah.
we're going to introduce him to the mix. And the rat lifts is, I mean, that's really up in the air right now, I think.
Yeah, I think we're probably going to get to see the aftermath of whatever goes down between these brothers. And that's probably going to be kind of siloed from the rest of the family because obviously it's going to be weird. But then I think Timothy is going to have to try and find a way to make his upset about Piper's decision so that Victoria doesn't get suspicious, but I think Victoria's already suspicious.
Hmm.
So, I think she's ahead of him.
Yeah.
What are you thinking is going to come up?
I'm still very much of the mindset that Jim Hollinger is Rick's father, and I think he's going
Mm-hmm.
to have to wrestle with that piece of information. I really don't know where the Mean Girls storyline is ultimately going, aside from the three of them likely not being friends by the time this season wraps up. And honestly, I'm still not really that interested in that storyline.
No, like it's annoying. I wish it didn't get as much screen time as it is getting, but I will say if there turns out to be a deeper mystery with Valentine and his friends, I'll be
Hmm.
more interested. But in those three, no, not really. It's just not very likable characters.
I think we'll get a little bit more Tim and Gary potentially interacting with
Mm-hmm.
each other as Tim tries to figure out what the future holds for his family and how he could potentially, circumvent the legal system in the United States. So those are just a few thoughts.
Yeah. Well, episode 6 will be out on Sunday evening, so just a couple more days to wait. Micah and I will be back reacting to the episode after it airs this Sunday, so definitely be sure to follow us on YouTube and Twitch if you want to hear our live reactions. We do also post these reactions to YouTube after the fact, so you can follow us there. We are What the Hype Podcast on YouTube. wherever you listen to podcasts and really on all the social media platforms. So please do give us a follow, and we would love to hear your thoughts and predictions about what's coming next week in the White Lotus. But Micah, this was fun. Thanks for hopping on to chat about this with me.
Yeah. And like I said, sorry this one was a little bit delayed, but the one we do on Sunday night will be right after the episode airs, and definitely looking forward to it. And like you said, if there's stuff that we didn't touch on, theories that you all have, just drop it in the comments, and we'll make sure we include it in the next reaction episode.
Awesome. Thanks so much, y'all. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye.
All righty.
Cool.
In the can. Easy peasy.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. Thanks so much for doing that.